Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and I do have a Throwback Thursday for you today. If you saw Tuesday's video, I wasn't entirely sure I was going to do a Throwback Thursday this week. If you haven't seen that video, definitely check it out because I kind of give you an update as far as what my schedule is going to be like going forward. And then I also did a bookshelf tour because I spent the weekend cataloging my books and reorganizing my shelves. So I went ahead and did a book tour for you guys, or bookshelf tour for you guys. So definitely, if you want to check out that video, I'll leave it linked in the description below. And then before we get into the book, go ahead and like this video and subscribe and hit the bell notification so you don't miss out on a thing. So this week I read the American Girl Book of Horse Stories, which has 10 different short stories inside, and the editors of American Girl magazine picked this book out. It is kind of aimed for like early teen girls, I would say would be the target audience for this book, but you can kind of go on either side of that as well. And even reading it as an adult, I found the stories pretty enjoyable, especially if you're a horse lover. I think you would find it enjoyable. But yeah, we'll go ahead and go through each of the stories. Like I said, it is a little dated in some instances. I think this one was published in 1949, I want to say, but there's a bunch of different copyrights. So the first one was 1946, and then it goes up to 1963. So I'm not entirely sure, but there's a stamp that says 1949. So don't know for sure, but that's that. So we'll just go ahead and go through each of the little stories here. What I like is most of them, not all of them, but most of them have like one illustration that goes along with them, which I love. Really old school illustrations. They bring me joy. So I'll go ahead and show you guys those as we go along. But the first book, or the first story in this book, is called Danger Rides the River Road by Margaret Lighton, I want to say. Um, and in this one, it takes place in the Revolutionary War, which I thought was pretty cool. And so you have Vinny, who's kind of being pressured by her aunt to be a young lady and act how she needs to act. And she lives with her grandfather and her brother, but her brother goes off to war. And so her brother has this young horse who wasn't old enough to take with him at the time. And so Vinny's like, well, I'll train him for you. And then next year, if you're able to come back and get him, you'll have this horse that's ready to go and who's absolutely amazing. So her aunt obviously frowns upon this because she's a young lady and she shouldn't be doing that, especially not riding this horse in uh, breeches and such. But her grandfather's like, there's nobody else on the farm that could ride the horse and train it, so it's fine. And so the whole premise of this story is the redcoats are coming and they're taking people's horses. And so she's like, I have to save my brother's horse. Fortunately, her grandfather's out of town because he's a patriot. And so obviously the British would, probably take him into custody if he had been home. And there's a neighbor who's helping the British, telling them where the best horses are. And the aunt doesn't like this neighbor, and she doesn't like the British. Like, she's a patriot too. So even though she doesn't really like the horses and she doesn't like Vinny, being involved in that, she agrees to help Vinny hide the horse. And so that's the whole premise of the book, is saving this horse, or the story rather, is just saving this horse. So really cute, really enjoyable. I like how it played out. I thought it was a lot of fun. And so this is the illustration I'm going to show you, and they're trying to get the horse into an area that the horse isn't used to, and he's all spooked. So this is the illustration here. But just, I love those little old school illustrations. I think they're so much fun. So yeah, I thought that one was pretty enjoyable, and I liked, even for the time period, that is still, she's kind of honoring who she is. So yeah, you have certain expectations based on the time period, but she's still gonna do what she loves, and she kind of has this spirit about her. So the next one actually has a male lead, a male protagonist in here, which I thought was really cool, especially at a book aimed for young teenage girls. You typically don't see that. And so this one is got by Carolyn St. Clair King, and it's called Beautiful and Free. And so in this one, you have Gil, and his family raises cattle, but it's been a really rough year. And so there was a drought, and a lot of cattle ended up passing away, and they're spending what little money they have to feed the remaining cattle, and they're kind of banking on selling these cattle. And his father promises Gil if they can sell the cattle that he can go away to school because he's 15 now and he's too old for the local school, so he's gonna have to go away, and that means boarding and everything like that. And his father goes into town, but the rich, well-off cattle rancher snagged the cattle buyer before his father can get to him. So he's like, I'm sorry, I can't send you to school. But this other rich family is having this competition. There's two wild horses, a stallion and a mare, that he really wants caught and he wants to have. And so his dad and his mom end up convincing him to go participate in the competition. But Gil really loves these horses and he wants them to stay free. So he ends up going, but he ends up having to make a choice between catching the horse because he ends up having the opportunity. Like, he doesn't go with the other people, he kind of goes off by himself, and the horse ends up coming that way. And so he has the opportunity to catch the horse, and if you catch the stallion, you get $1,000, and if you catch the mare, you get $500. So he has this opportunity, and he has to make a choice between letting them be free and then catching them and going to school. So between doing what's right or following his dreams, taking the opportunity to follow his dreams. And he ends up doing what's right, which is really cool, and it works out in his favor because there's this guy that he doesn't know who he is, and it's actually that cattle buyer. And he is impressed by Gil and wants to go, to come to dinner and everything like that. So I thought that was really, really cool. And I like that he had that choice to make, and it's not always an easy choice. And this is the illustration for this one, which I also love. Those are the two wild horses, but yeah, just love the illustrations in this book, like, make me so happy. The next one's called Fiesta Parade and is by Eleanor Hoffman, and this one follows Julie Clark, and there's gonna be a Fiesta Parade, and she's all excited to ride in it. She has a horse, and she's getting the saddle ready, and then she's hoping that her crush, she'll be able to ride next to him. He's like, why don't we polish our saddles together? And she's really excited about that. But her ill and disabled cousin is coming into town, who's a lot younger. She's like 9, and Julie's about 16. And so she's, kind of bummed out because she knows she's going to have to pay attention to her cousin and everything like that. And her cousin's going to be around while she's trying to flirt with this boy and just kind of get in the way of that. And so she's really bummed out. And so I like this one because the feelings were really real there. Like, it's understandable, but at the same time, she had compassion for her cousin, and she wanted to include her cousin as well. And so she ends up having a choice to make as well between doing what she really wanted to do and kind of following um, those dreams, and then kind of doing something else and including her cousin, even though it's not necessarily something that she had planned on. And so I really, really like that. And in the end, again, it works out. She catches the attention of the boy, of course. This is aimed for teenage girls. You would always catch the attention of the boy. And I don't know. I like, though, that she had that choice to make. And even while she was having those feelings, she still, you know, thought of her cousin and wasn't just selfish. And so I love the artwork for this one. It kind of has that Spanish feel to it as well. And so, because that's kind of the theme of the parade, is so you have the women dressing up, in Spanish clothing, and then the males as well. So, but yeah, I thought that was pretty enjoyable as well. The next one is A Touch of Arab, and it's by Vivian Breck. And I think this one was one of my favorite stories. So in this one, you have Meg and her father. Her father's a professor, but every summer he does ranger work, and so every summer, Meg and him go out and are rangers essentially, and help the campers and whatnot. And this year, her father tells her, "We're only doing this for 2 weeks. Put in my resignation and I'm going to be teaching for the summer. And you're going to go to a camp where you can interact with children your own age. Like, I think you're too isolated. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to keep your horse." 'Cause she has this horse, and he's like, "We just can't afford it. And so I'm sorry, but we're going to have to sell him." So, of course, she's disappointed. Not only is her summer ruined, she's not able to, be at this um camping area that she really enjoys, but she's also losing her horse, and she's having to do something that is of no interest to her. Well, for the 2 weeks, there's this boy who's 17, and he's really into photography. And so he comes to camp so he could take pictures, but he has no clue about camping or anything else. So Meg ends up helping him out, right? And in the meantime, he's taking pictures of her, and she's doing all these tricks on her horse and everything, trying to show her dad, like, "Look how awesome this horse is, and you want to sell him." Well, a storm comes through, and of course, the boy is clueless and ends up getting into a pickle. And so Meg has to figure out how to save him, but it's kind of a mess. And so she ends up sending the horse to save him. And then she's kind of stuck because of that. And the horse, ends up running off to get the father and saves the day. So I like this one because she ends up being able to keep her horse, but she still has to go to the camp and everything. And, the ranger part is still cut short. So you kind of have, like, it didn't work out perfectly. Like, not everything worked out, but in the end, she does get to keep her horse, which I thought was pretty cool. And it's called A Touch of Arab because the horse is part quarter horse with a little bit of Arab in there as well. So, thought that one was a pretty fun one. And I did mark a page in this story. And this, when I read this line, I marked it because it made me think of Giovanna, which his channel is Serene Sloth, and it made me think of her and her channel. And it said, "After that, we were easy together. Somehow, when people too old for fairy tales both like Alice in Wonderland, it gives them the feeling of being old friends." And I just like that line. I know Giovanna really likes Alice in Wonderland, and I think it's really true, and we see it in the booktube community how um these books and these stories, especially some of like the more classic stories or the ones that are really popular, really bring us together and give us that camaraderie, And I don't know, I just really like that line, and I thought it was really fitting. And then it also made me think of Giovanna. If you're interested, I'll leave her channel linked down below as well, Serene Sloth. Definitely check her out if you are not familiar with her, because I really enjoy watching her videos. But yeah, I thought that was a good line, and I thought it really captured, kind of the YouTube community as well. But this is the illustration for this story here. So that's where the boy is in trouble. But yeah, definitely a very cute story, and I think, like I said, it was probably one of my favorites, if not my favorite for sure. So, the next one is called Sundance, and this is by June Hall Mills. And so this one's kind of, again, kind of a sad one, like kind of the reality of life sometimes, but again, kind of has that positive spin on it as well. So in this one, you have Lissa, and her family were farmers, but just it wasn't working out, so they end up selling the farm and moving into town. So of course, all her siblings have like smaller animals that they can bring with them, and she has this horse that they end up having to sell because they just don't have a place to keep him. And so she's very upset about that, obviously. And the horse gets sold to her crush's family. It actually gets sold to his uncle, but so she's kind of being all awkward around him. They're kind of friendly together, but she has a crush on him, and then she's kind of avoiding him, and it's all awkward. And he's trying to talk to her. Well, these two ranch hands are trying to load the horse, and he's all spooked, and he's fighting them, and they're getting frustrated, and the one ranch hand goes to pick up a chain, and so she rushes over and is like, get your hands off my horse. So the uncle comes over and he's like, well, I bought that horse, like it's not yours anymore. And she's like, I understand, but can I load him? Like, can we make a deal and I'll load him for you? And so he ends up agreeing, and she loads the horse, and her crush comes over, and he finally is able to talk to her. And it kind of has like a positive ending because, like, yes, you had to sell your horse, but my uncle bought him for me, and you know I'll take care of him for you, and you're able to come visit him whenever you want, and I'll ride him into town so you can visit him whenever you want. So she still gets to spend time with her horse, and then she gets to spend time with her crush too, which I thought was, again, it kind of a happy ending within the realistic plane. Like, yeah, she had to sell her horse, which sucks, but and this is the illustration for that one, and she's just kind of talking to her horse, trying to calm him down after they were mean to him. Um, the next one kind of has, I mean, obviously it's not 50s because this, is copyrighted before that, but it kind of has that feel to it. So in this one, you have, what's her name? I can't even remember her name. But this is called Palomino Cupid by Frances Pretty, and I can't remember her name. Her cousin's name is Linda. Um, but um, well, whatever. So anyway, you have this girl, and she's spending the summer with her cousin and her aunt. So she wakes up, and there's this horse, and he's eating daisies in her window. And so she goes running out, and she sees this horse being led away by this really cute boy. And so she comes running back in, and she's asking her cousin, like, who's this boy? And so she's like, that's the neighbor Walt, and good luck because he only thinks there's boys and horses in the world. He doesn't think there's boys and girls. And so they're gonna have this beach party where she's gonna meet, her cousin's gang and everything like that. And so she kind of develops this plan. So she goes over and she feeds the horse apples, which I didn't like that part. It's like you don't feed an animal that's not yours because you don't know if it has like any dietary restrictions or anything like that. So never feed an animal that's not yours. But anyway, she goes over and she's feeding him apples. And so the next time he comes, he's always escaping, and he comes over to the house, and she goes out there, to catch him. And here comes the boy. Well, the horse runs right to her because, like, oh, you have apples. Like, I remember you. And so he comes running to her, and the boy's like, oh, wow, he likes you. And so she's like, I ride at home. Like, can you help me? Do you know anywhere where I can rent a horse so I could ride while I'm here? And so he's like, oh yeah, you can ride here. And then there's all these trails. And she's like, well, why don't you come to the beach party later and we could talk more about the trails? And then you can take me to the stable because I get lost really easy. So she's really laying in on thick. um, and so she ends up going to the beach party, and he doesn't show up. So she's really disappointed and bummed. And then she comes across this horse. Um, and it all makes sense why he didn't show up. But yeah, so it's just the whole premise of her trying to get the guy and using the horse. But he even mentions like most girls like act like they like my horse, but they really don't have a clue, where I can tell like you really know horses. So even though she's doing what the other girls did, she does have kind of a standing because she really does like horses and she does have an affinity with them. But she is still kind of, doing what the other girls did as far as trying to get him because, that's the story. So, but I don't know. I just like that kind of retro. Like I said, it kind of has a 50s vibe, and the way she was describing his hair and everything like that. I really just enjoyed it. And this is the illustration for that one. But I thought that one was cute, even though it was a little bit frivolous. I did enjoy it, I have to say. The next one is by Ellsworth Newcomb, Newcomb, and it's called Two for the Show. So in this one, we have Millie, and there's a local horse show that's happening, and she's always wanted to ride in a horse show. And she has this old army horse who's not very pretty to look at, but he has a lot of heart. And so the more well off girls, of course, are making fun of her and her horse. But there's one girl who's pretty well off who is friendly with her. And her father wants her to ride this specific horse, but she wants to ride her horse. So she tells Millie, like, why don't you ride him? And then you'll win for sure. And, Lois can't make fun of you anymore. And so she thinks about it because she's like, well, that would be amazing. But then she feels bad, like she'd be disloyal to Old Bones, who's the horse's name. And so she's like, no, I put in the work with Bones here. I'm going to ride my horse. And so then the father comes and he's like, why don't you ride this horse? And she's like, no, I'm going to stick with my horse. Thank you, sir. And so, of course, the snotty girl's like, well, I'll want to ride him. And he ends up giving in to the snotty girl, even though he's not happy about it. And so something happens, like there's three events and she has to ride in all three events, and she knows the first event there's no chance because it's like based on confirmation and such, and you have this old army horse that's not very conformationally pretty or anything like that. So she knows there's no chance with that one, and of course the spoiled girl with the fancy horse that she's borrowing gets to win that one. And then the second one, she's like, this is where I have a chance, um, but you have to cross the finish line with a button, and her button ends up falling off. So even though she crosses the finish line first, her button ended up falling off, and so she doesn't win that one. And then the third one, she's like, there's no way, like, she ends up making it to the jump off and everything, but of course, the snotty girl with the fancy horse, that horse is a really good jumper. She's like, as good as Bones is, like, there's just no chance against that horse. Well, something happens and it gives her a chance. So I really like that. And then there's another kind of conflict in the story is her father is really struggling financially at work. He's been trying to land this account with the the guy that ended up wanting offering the horse for her to ride, and hasn't been able to land that account. And so she's kind of disappointed, and um thinking, maybe if I had ridden that horse, like it would have opened it up, for my father. Well, because she was loyal to her horse, that guy likes that and ends up like, let's get together with dinner with your folks and everything. And so it kind of works out in her father's favor that she did show that loyalty as well, because it's a reflection of his parenting. The next one is called A Horse in Her Future, and this is by Margaret Barrage, I want to say is how you pronounce her last name. And in this one, you have Darlene, and she doesn't have a horse of her own. So she volunteers at the stable and she mucks out stalls and everything, and then she gets to exercise some of the horses. And this one kind of has like a two-part conflict as well. And so her father's struggling financially and tells her, we just can't afford to give you your allowance anymore, and we can't really afford to do your back to school, shopping and such. So you're going to have to get a job for the summer. And so she's kind of bummed because the job, he's like, I can help you. There's an opening here. I'll talk to them. And that job, she's not going to be able to volunteer at the stable anymore. So she's not going to be able to spend time with the horses. So she's really bummed out. And she's trying to figure out how to get a job that still allows her to be at the stable as well. And then there's also this girl who is always left behind because they're always going on trail rides, but you have to be a certain level of rider in order to go on the trail rides. And this girl just kind of doesn't apply herself. She's kind of lazy. She doesn't take very good care of her horse. And so Millie or Darlene doesn't like her. Sorry, I'm getting my characters confused here. Darlene doesn't like her because she never takes care of her horse, and she just doesn't try when she's riding, and so she always gets left behind. So while Darlene's there, this girl's always there riding. And something ends up happening, and they end up kind of talking and end up forming a friendship, and Darlene starts to help her out. So you kind of has that twofold, and then Darlene having to leave the stable and go to work is affecting this girl. And it's like, well, who am I going to ride with and everything? And so it ends up working out, of course. But yeah, you have those kind of two conflicts. And it's funny because at the end, her mom, she's telling her, you know, her plan and about this other girl. And she's like, I thought that was a girl you couldn't stand. And so she's like, well, we're friends now. But this is the illustration for this one. The last one didn't have any illustrations, so but yeah, it's kind of when they're forming their friendship. So pretty cute, pretty enjoyable, and um, the only thing I didn't like about that one is I didn't see, especially for the time period, how much she's gonna make money wise with her plan. I didn't see that being very realistic, basing what I know off of like the industry because my mom worked in that industry for quite a while. And you don't make that much. And being that this was set in olden days, I'm like, yeah, no, like that part wasn't very realistic, but otherwise it was a pretty enjoyable story. The next one, I think there's two more stories I want to say. The next one is Anna Paula and the Golden Horse by Marion Garthwaite. Um, and this one, you have Anna Paula, who's the main character, and it's her namesake day. And so her grandmother comes into town, her cousin's staying with them, and she's kind of a little rough. Again, very tomboyish, doesn't act how a lady should act. And so her cousin's like the perfect example of a Spanish lady and how she should act and get a husband and everything like this. Um, and you have Anna Paula who's out there, you know, roping horses and riding and such. And so her grandmother's coming into town, and so she goes to ride out to meet her. Well, she had to rope a horse herself and get it all saddled, so she's kind of disheveled looking. And so her grandmother's kind of disappointed because she's like, "You're not acting how you should act." And there's this beautiful Palomino, um, and so she's hoping that that's going to be her present for her namesake day. Well, the day comes and her grandmother ends up giving her like these jade earrings. And so she's really disappointed because she really wanted the horse. And so they end up going to Mass, but they have to ride there. Well, they come across this grizzly that has a fresh kill, and chaos ensues. And of course, she also has a crush, and her crush has been flirting it up with her cousin, Concha, who's the proper Spanish lady. And so she's a marrying age. I was trying to say marrying and marriage together, but marrying age. And so she doesn't feel like she really knows how to interact with men at all. And so she's, you know, struggling with, you know, doing what's expected of her and still kind of honoring herself. And she ends up, because of her skills and writing and such, her and her crush end up kind of saving the day with this bear. Okay? And so she ends up going back, and her grandmother is talking to her and ends up giving her the horse. She's like, I almost didn't give you this horse because I thought you had too many horses and you're not acting like a lady. And so they talk, and she's like, you know, thank you so much for the horse, but I will work on, you know, being more ladylike, but at the same time, this is who I am. I'm never gonna be like Concha. And you know, I don't understand men at all. And her grandma goes, well, you know, this is kind of a new world. You know, I still have very old world thoughts, but maybe these men here in California, you know, have different ideas as far as women, and there's not just one way to act, you know. And so I kind of like that her grandma kind of came around and kind of gave her encouragement as well. excuse Barley hitting stuff. He scared himself. And I love this illustration as well. So this is her with the bear, but absolutely stunning. And then the last um, story here is by Janet Lambert, and it's called Tall as the Stars. And so this one you have Judy and her sister Cynthia. So Cynthia is, the classic girl, all about the boys and such. And they live on an army, what is it called? Jeez Louise. I should know this. My brain's fried. So they live like on an army area. I know this because my grandpa was in the Navy. But anyway, so her sister kind of got in trouble in, like, I think history class or something, and kind of spouted off her mouth about um, the army parade fiesta thing, and there's this jumping competition and how she's an amazing jumper and yada yada yada. So her history teacher's like, okay, I'll come and see you jump then. And so her sister, they both have a horse. Their father gifted them both horses, and her sister threw a fit and got, because she's the oldest, she should have her pick, and she ended up getting the more beautiful looking horse, of course. And but she hasn't really done anything with him, and so she's like, please let me ride your horse. You've done such a good job training him, and I know I'll have a chance to win on him. And then again, there's a crush. And her sister's like a junior, and Judy is a freshman. Well, there's an upperclassman, Bill, who always takes time to talk to Judy and say hi. Well, now all of a sudden, Cynthia has a crush on him, so she also wants to show off in the show for him. And so she finally just gives in and is like, fine, you can ride my horse. But he's not as easy as he looks. Like, I put in the work and I know him. And oh, yeah, it'll be fine. And doesn't listen to her younger sister about this horse that she's worked with. So anyway, it kind of backfires on the older sister, and she blames the younger sister, of course. But Bill, her crush, sees the truth. And so it does end up working in her favor. Not only does she have success with her sister's horse, even though her sister hasn't done anything with this horse, but she is a good horsewoman, and so she's able to kind of work him over and through, the course of the jumps. But her crush sees, what transpired between her and her sister. And so, it kind of works out in her favor in the end. But yeah, I thought that one was pretty good as well. I don't think this one has an illustration either. Oh, it does. Okay. And so there's that illustration. So only one of them didn't have an illustration, which is a little weird, but yeah. Those are the stories. I know this video got a little longer, but I really thought, with as short as they are, I thought the stories, like I said, they had all the components you need for a good story. Some of them I did want a little bit more after the fact, but they solved the conflict, so you got that resolution for sure. But yeah, I really kind of want to talk about each story individually, even though I know it made this video a little bit longer. But yeah, I thought this one was really enjoyable. I think if you're kind of looking for more vintage type horror stories, definitely try to get your hands on a copy of this. I'm not sure how easy it will be. Obviously it's older. I'm not sure how available it will be, but I'll try to leave links, like if there's copies on thrift books or eBay or something like that. I'll try to leave links in the description below where you can maybe find a copy, because I think, I don't know, I really like this. So vintage horror stories, definitely worth it for sure. Even though some of them are a little bit dated and such, I kind of like that historical aspect to them, and kind of that different time frame, for sure. So, and I like that even though some of the expectations for those time frames, you still had, these girls kind of being true to themselves and who they were. But I'll go ahead and leave you guys here. uh Book of the month Mondays are still going to be happening. I know I missed this past week, but otherwise those will be every Monday. You'll have a book of the month video. And the dogs are throwing things here. But otherwise, videos will just pop up here and there as I get to the books I'm reading. And yeah, that's it for today. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.